The valiant fight for Florida's families kicked into an even higher gear this week, and the heroes of the Working Family Lobby Corps were standing strong on the front lines, battling for truth and justice. On Monday, SB 462, legislation that would protect Florida's fragile water supply from billions of gallons of toxic chemicals generated by fracking, was finally heard in its first Senate committee. This development was fueled by thousands of activists in the Capitol and communities across the state demanding that the bill be heard.
Contrary to some of the testimony we've heard earlier today, there are distinct damages associated with fracking that cannot be overcome or avoided by any sort of regulatory scheme.
The bill passed the committee with a unanimous vote. On Wednesday, the so-called bully voucher bill, HB 1, was up in the House Education Committee. This bill is the biggest expansion of Florida's voucher schemes in state history that would divert millions of dollars from our public schools to for-profit charter schools with no accountability and no education standards.
Holy trickery!
The bill essentially provides private school vouchers on demand to any parent who claims their child has been a victim of bullying with no reporting and no objective criteria.
We are opposed because this is just another scheme that is designed to enrich private institutions at the expense of our most important public good, that is public education. I think it's important to point out to everybody in the room that we're having this big discussion. This bill is already on the floor. You will be discussing it in just a couple of hours on the full floor of the Florida House and voting on it tomorrow. That's kind of weird when it comes to process. Thank you.
The bill passed committee with only a single Democrat in support, but in reality, the committee's vote was pointless.
Holy masquerade!
In a dastardly abuse of the process, the bully voucher bill had already been folded into the House's massively terrible HB 7055 that would be before the House later the same day. The Speaker's heavy-handed tactics have led many to ask, who's the real bully?
I don't like bullies.
While the legislature is in full swing, so is the Constitutional Revision Commission, and later on Wednesday, the Florida AFL-CIO joined the League of Women Voters and over a dozen other statewide groups in a press conference to call attention to the terrible 10.
Let's meet our contestants.
These 10 proposals in front of the CRC represent the biggest attacks on working families, including the near elimination of privacy rights, the elimination of restrictions on public funding for religious institutions, a gutting of home rule authority for local governments, and much more.
With so many proposals also moving through the legislature, it begs the question of who is really in control. Is this commission acting independently, or is it under the control of their appointing authorities?
Proposal 95 is dangerous. Regardless of what people say, it is very much still alive and something that the voters should pay special attention to. Thank you so much.
Moments after the Terrible 10 press conference, Lobby Corps members rushed to the fourth floor to support House Democrats in a press conference calling attention to amendments on the dreaded HB 7055. House Speaker Corcoran subverted the entire legislative process with this massive education train bill.
More powerful than a locomotive.
HB 7055 includes the decertification of unions for instructional personnel, the bully voucher bill, the taking of tax dollars from public schools for charter school operators, and 56 other major changes to public education.
I know for a fact it is because you want to push the special interest and you want to push your agenda. Your idea is not to help children. Your idea is to make sure that you continue to fill the pockets of special interest.
Follow the money. This is not about policy, this is about money.
HB 7055 was on the House floor later in the day, and the Working Families Lobby Corps organized outside the House chambers to make sure House members knew exactly where working families stand on this horrible bill. On Thursday, the House gathered for debate and a final vote on this critical legislation, a mere 15 days after it was first posted with no consideration in any policy committee and almost no public input on the legislation.
This train of a bill is headed for an unconstitutional crash, and on that ground alone should be rejected.
This train bill is a direct repeat of what we saw last session. It's 7069 on steroids.
This is not the kind of thing we ought to be doing in our budget. These are policy issues and they ought to be addressed separately.
If these bills are so good, if it's so great for the education of our children, which represents 67 counties, 412 cities, and 20 million plus people, why can't they stand on their own?
This is a right-to-work state. So what are we worried about with unions here? Yet we come up with all sorts of bills where we put in language where we're going to punish unions. And we're going to do this in this bill to punish teachers, to make sure that they can't collectively bargain. Well, I may not have come from union, I may come from management, but I certainly believe that some of the greatness of this country was the fact that we can collectively bargain.
The problem with this bill is the public perception we're sending is we're not dealing with the bully. We're teaching our children to flee.
This bill also establishes a new kind of governance structure called District Independent Autonomous School, which will be governed by unelected, unaccountable, and an undefined group of individuals.
Next year, there's going to be an expansion of the Hope Scholarship Program, inevitably, until we finally get to a place where we now have universal vouchers. And boom, public education as we know it has disappeared.
Instead of working with House Democrats on these priorities, what continues to happen is the discard of the will of the students, the teachers, and parents in favor of continuing the lining of the pockets of companies who view our children as dollars in a spreadsheet.
A bill within this bill is still going through committee. It's still going through committee, but we're getting ready to pass this same bill out of this chamber. Fundamentally, that makes absolutely no sense. This bill sets a standard of how this body takes advantage of Florida's public education system, as well as Florida's Constitution. It's using our kids as an excuse to turn education into a business.
The measure passed with all Democrats voting no and 5 Republicans standing up to the House dictator Corcoran.
Yes, if I must suffer, humanity will suffer with me.
The only match for evildoers all session has been a constant presence of union heroes fighting the good fight for all workers in Florida.
Working Family Lobby Corps is our voice, our unified voice.
No matter what your issue is, your legislators need to know how you feel about it.
From what I've seen here, this legislature is so far out of whack that they are not for working people.
Please get involved. There is not much accountability up here for these senators running wild.
They're working more for themselves and corporations than they are for the people.
They don't hear from us and they do whatever they want. So we need to put a stop to that. We want them to do what we want.
Public education is under attack. Labor unions are under attack.
In solidarity, we get more accomplished.
I encourage everyone to come up and stand where I'm standing here in the Capitol today.
I especially want to encourage younger workers and first-timers to come up here. Your voice needs to be heard.
Come up to help fight the fight, and all Floridians get out and vote and stop, to change the lopsidedness of what's going on here.
Just 4 short weeks left, heroes. Stand strong and join us next week for another legislative update. Solidarity.